Our next speaker has something that I'm sure is going to perk you up. Monique McKinnon joins us today all the way from Ottawa, Canada, to take us through what we need to know to make it in today's Vuca world. I've heard a lot of different acronyms. I would call this world LOCA. Vuca is a new one. It stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I, for one, am very curious to know the kind of strategies I need to keep in mind to make sense of this Vuca world. Monique, the floor is yours. Welcome. A round of applause, please.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for inviting me. One of the people I was speaking with on my travels used the word progressive to describe the fact that I was invited from Canada to come here. And I think that's such a fantastic word to describe what innovation is about. And my areas of expertise are predominantly collaboration, as well as innovation and negotiation. So when you're doing any one of those things, I recommend being pragmatic, is to not focus on those end goals, but to focus on something that really motivates you. So for me, I'm picking that as my word. It's progressive. So because I want you to walk away from this, having a tool that you can use even as soon as you're outside the door, pick your own motivating word, okay? So what I'm going to teach you today is how to tap into your intuition as well as your imagination. And you're going to use that to help you make some reliable decisions quickly. All sorts of decisions, whether they're professional or they're personal or both. As well as today's leaders who want to be focused on innovation, they have to have foresight. It's almost a given. So I'm going to be teaching you how to really master your foresight. In addition to that, you need to absolutely be balanced. And part of that reason is that you have to be agile. So when you're agile, you need to have that balance. And so it means that you need to be able to react or respond in the present, as well as reflect on the past. Okay, so on the fly simply means that you're usually moving, physically moving, or you're saying things quickly. So just to give you a few examples, during my trip already, I was in a lineup and I was behind this person who was going to be in an interview with Hyatt. He was coming from Toronto, and I always test to see if my subject, call it subject for now, is actually prepared. And I find most of the time that person's not prepared. So one of the ways they're not prepared is they haven't made a decision that they want what they want. So in this case, he hadn't made a decision that he wanted to land the job. Now the second thing I checked in on was, did he know what his strengths were? He didn't know what his strengths were. And then I said, are you ready to negotiate? And he said, well, how can I be ready to negotiate if I don't know what's on the table? And I went, okay, we're going to cover a few things. So inevitably, I cover what I need to do in front of the person that I attract, usually in 5 minutes. Okay, so I am telling you that you need to believe eventually that you can do things between 5 and 15 minutes, okay? Because you're actually in the present. It's not about so much of time, but the fact that it's about quality, that you're really focused in the moment. Obviously, you need to be sold on negotiating. One of the other people I was speaking with, he was an engineer, and he said, look, I'm going to just stay as an engineer, do this. And I can tune into people. I'm actually going to teach you how to tune into people today. And I could tell there was something next, like there was another thing he wanted to jump into. And eventually he divulged what it was. And you need to believe that someone's actually going to divulge what you want. It's just a matter of minutes. So I found out that he wanted to go into marketing. I said, engineer and marketing, it doesn't really jive for me. And he said, well, I used to be in sales, so I'm interested in marketing. And he said, well, but I need to negotiate it, and I'm not a good negotiator. So I said, well, okay, sales and negotiating, just think of them as two separate words with different letters, that's all. I said, if you're a good salesperson, you are definitely a good negotiator. So it really has a lot to do with, are you sold on, needing to negotiate? We're negotiating all the time. So it really helps for deal making, innovating, productivity, relationships. It's also relevant to fulfilling your company's purpose. And as well, this morning there were some talks about happiness and making Dubai the happiest city and maybe the happiest country. Okay, so does anybody here know how to crack a safe? You don't have to answer that question. So what I'm teaching you is how to crack a safe, is how to get into it without having a key or a combination. It's actually a 5-step process. The first step you only need to do once, so really it's only 4 steps. And you have the chance to, whenever you're open, to continually practice those 4 steps. Before I get into those secret 4 steps or 5 steps, I want to tell you that I've actually been doing this over and over and over again for the last 12 and a half years. So one of my gifts or talents is to take the complex and drill it down into the simple as well as what's abstract and make it concrete. Okay, so we're really talking about using your subconscious here, which represents 95% of your brain power. A lot of us have been trained to think that our rational mind is the most powerful, but it only represents 5% of your total power. Now, when you tap into your subconscious as well as other people's subconscious, you're really you're thinking very quickly on your feet. It includes your gut feeling. So those are the steps. I'm going to go through the steps right now. All right, so first step is really to know what your intuitive channel is. This is the term I came up with just to simplify things. And how you know is when you're talking to people, you will very consistently use a certain word. It's just a matter of kind of listening to yourself as you're talking to someone, so kind of in a third person position. And you will tend to say, I see what you mean, or I hear you, or I'm not feeling it. Or it could be, I'm sensing that there's something's off here. So it's typically going to be more one word than another word. So this is key. You need to know this. All right, here's the simple table. So whatever your answer was, you go towards the right, and you'll find out what your intuitive source as well as what your intuitive channel is. So your intuitive source is simply, where does that come from? Where does that information come from? Okay, so give myself an example, or give you an example. So for me, thinking and sensing is my most used word, okay, because I use my intuition a lot, so I use sense a lot. And I get issues with my crown. When I'm stressed or I'm receiving a lot of information, I feel a tension here. So my husband has actually found this out before I have because he massages me here every night. So I've learned to massage myself there, okay? And that helps to release the stress there, and it makes me more open to what I'm able to channel or receive. So you won't get this table again unless you ask me for the presentation, so kind of take a snapshot of it at this point, at least lock in what your intuitive source in your channel is. Okay, so the second step is you want to let go of whatever's in your way. Because if you don't, then you won't have a clear path for moving forwards with whomever you're negotiating with. And sometimes we don't even know we're negotiating with someone until we're actually moving forwards. So you want to let go of resistance, like limiting beliefs. It could be your values. It could be physical tension, your attitude. So do a quick shift on that. Beliefs are not as easy to shift, but over time you can actually shift your beliefs. And more often than not, it has to do with practicing something, and eventually you change that belief around that. So that's an example of a limiting belief, is you might think she's just full of, like you can't negotiate in this amount of time. So I'm talking about the preliminary steps where you're actually assessing to see if that person you're talking with, you can trust them and you want to move forwards with them, for instance. Okay, so I want you to think about a scenario where you felt lost. It could be mentally lost, physically lost, any level of lost, or any of the combination of those. Okay? Here's some questions around that. So, what was the context? So, the meaning of all messages is context dependent. That's why I asked you to get a context in mind. Also, what was your mental, emotional, and physical state during that time? So that'll be easy to answer once you have that particular example. The next step is actually key for being able to negotiate successfully. So you want to make sure that all of that tension is released. One of the things I've noticed is if I'm super nervous about something, like, whether it's a negotiation or it could be speaking, I will usually knock into some door frame, or there's something that happens where immediately my subconscious is trying to help me to release that energy. And while I might hit my funny bone or something and it's not so funny at that moment, it's actually my subconscious is helping me to relax more for my next step. So it's kind of an interesting thing. The body's very, very intelligent. There you go. Okay. All right, so you know what VUCA is. That's a term borrowed from another keynote speaker in the States. It stands for Volatile, uncertain, complex, and abstract. And what you want to do is you want to translate it to the opposite of that. So that's stable, certain, simple, and concrete. So really, your success is going to be in the quality of the questions that you come up with. And you want to think about, what is your aim while you're negotiating? Is it you're trying to find out what's the best negotiated alternative for you? Is it you're wondering what your customers want next, and you don't want to go through a huge lengthy process of focus groups and 6 months out, and then before you know it, you're actually no longer on the cusp. You've spent too much time on this kind of thing. One thing I've noticed for sure is this, using this process, a lot of the times you will know at least 80% of what you know. And it's not about giving yourself a whole lot of time and saying, I need to have spent 6 months or a year researching whether this is the right partner for me or whatever it might be. So this is key. You're actually not sitting there and thinking all this through. So you've got these questions in mind, but you allow yourself to roam about and do your usual stuff, right? Could be you go get some coffee, or you take a shower, or it's usually something that we call mindless. In those mindless moments, the brain is working with great ease. And the brain loves to be constructive, fortunately, right? So it will go to work on that question, that seed that you've actually planted. And one of the tricks that I've discovered for myself is if you believe that it can happen really fast, it will. So it really, I would used to practice and say, I'm going to get this answer within the next 30 minutes. And guaranteed I would get the answer within 30 minutes. And then I kept shortening that time. And now my time is basically just a couple of minutes. Okay, so it's really kind of fun. So you're going to receive according to your intuitive channel. I've presented a lot to the building industry, so of course there's lots of different types of professionals in that industry. And the people I tend to come across with, they're usually very technical, but they're also balanced. They manage operations, and so they need to be very agile in their positions and know a lot of things across a lot of different areas. So they're the D collaborators. I'm going to tell you about your collaboration type in a couple of minutes. So you want to write that information down, or if you have your phone, you can voice record whatever's coming in at that point. Try not to give yourself too much time. Okay, here's another fun tool. So this tells you what you're good at according to what your intuitive channel is. And this is one of the most important pieces of information that you can receive when you're collaborating, when you're innovating, because it will tell you what your strength is. A lot of people, I find, when you talk to them about selling or collaborating or whatever, they will focus inevitably on their weaknesses. I guess this is the way that we've been trained. Oh, I've got to improve my weaknesses. But if you want to be on your strong foot and move forward solidly, you want to know what your strengths are. So those are your strengths according to whatever your intuitive channel is. So here's some exercises that you can do on a personal and a professional level that will help to promote more of your intuitive channel being used. Okay, so these are some of the things that they're easy enough. I remember my brother, he's a sales executive, he travels all over the world, and he said, we were actually at a musical, and as the musical was going on, he just whispered to me, and he said, oh my God, I'm getting so many ideas right now. And I said, well, do you have anything to write them down with? And that's an example, right? You're somewhere and your mind's really relaxed and it's letting go. And so you need to be prepared to have something to write with